Good evening, and welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Tonight, there are no clashing swords or famous kings. Our journey takes us inside a smoky Viking longhouse, just before the dawn. You'll find yourself on a simple wooden platform, listening to the soft breathing of your family and the low crackle of a dying fire. We are going to live a day in the life of a Viking Age housewife, a world of unending, complex, and vital chores. And while it may seem simple, the relentless physical labor and sheer number of skills required would likely exhaust our modern sensibilities before breakfast was even over. If you find this quiet approach to history a welcome refuge, a gentle tap of the like button or subscribing is a small, silent way of helping others find this space too. It's deeply appreciated. I always enjoy seeing where in the world you're listening from. Feel free to leave your city or country below, and maybe what time of night it is where you are. Now, let your mind quiet itself. Let the day's concerns drift away. Our story begins in the cold and the dark, a long, long time ago. The first thing you become aware of is not light, but a particular kind of darkness. It's the deep, inky black of the pre-dawn, a profound cold that has crept past the edge of your wool blankets and seems to be seeping into your very bones. You lie still on the raised wooden sleeping platform that runs along the inner wall of the longhouse, a shelf of humanity packed together for warmth. Above you, the thick turf and timber roof is a solid, invisible mass of shadow. Beside you, the steady, rhythmic breathing of your husband and the softer, quicker breaths of your children are a familiar living chorus in the immense quiet. But you can't linger in this drowsy state. Something is wrong. Not a threat, not a sound, but an absence. The air is still, but it's a dead, breathless stillness. The heart of the home, the great central hearth, has gone almost entirely quiet. Its life force is fading. Slowly, carefully, making the absolute minimum of sound, you swing your legs over the edge of the platform. Your bare feet meet the hard-packed earthen floor, and a jolt of pure, uncompromising cold shoots up through you. It is a silent, urgent alarm clock, more effective than any rooster's crow. You reach for your clothes in the darkness, your hands finding them by memory alone. You pull a thick, undyed wool tunic, coarse and familiar, over the simple linen shift you slept in. Your movements are economical, practiced, born of 1,000 similar mornings. The whole longhouse is a single cavernous room, a shared vessel for your family, a few unmarried farmhands, your husband's elderly parents, and, on the other side of a low partition where the air is thick with the scent of hay and warm bodies, the two most valuable cows wintering over. Privacy is not a concept you have a word for. Quiet is a courtesy you strive to maintain. You pad your way toward the center of the great hall, your eyes now adjusted enough to the gloom to see the faint, ghostly outlines of the massive wooden support posts that hold up the roof ridge. You see the darker shapes of sleeping forms, the stacked chests along the walls, and the long, smoldering rectangle of the hearth. This is the problem. The fire, the very soul of the house, is little more than a pile of pale gray ash and a few stubborn ruby-red embers winking sleepily in the gloom, like tired eyes. Letting it go out completely would be a disaster. Not a dramatic, life-ending disaster that the skalds would sing about, but a miserable, work-multiplying, soul-crushing one. Relighting a fire from scratch with flint and steel is a tedious, uncertain business. Preserving the embers is everything. You crouch down, the profound cold of the earth floor seeping through the thick wool of your tunic. The ever-present smoke, a constant companion in this life, hangs heavy in the still air. It stings your eyes and catches in the back of your throat, a familiar, acrid perfume you've long since learned to breathe through, to accept as part of the air itself. You remember a trader once telling a story of the glittering, clean-smelling cities to the south, and you found it hard to imagine a home without this comforting, if irritating, blanket of smoke. Historians still argue about just how ventilated these smoky longhouses really were. Some point to holes deliberately left in the roof, while others suggest the evidence of chronic lung conditions and soot-blackened sinuses found in Viking-age skeletons tells a different, more cough-filled story. Using a small, shovel-like tool made of iron, a precious and costly implement, you gently, carefully, begin to work the ashes. It's a delicate task, like tending to a fragile newborn. You need to gather the remaining embers into a tight, cozy pile, a little community of warmth, without smothering them or breaking them apart. They are the seeds of today's heat, today's meals, today's light. With the embers gathered, you introduce the first course of their breakfast. A handful of dried moss you gathered last autumn, which is fibrous and catches fire with a soft, satisfying whoom. Next, you add small, bone-dry twigs, placed like a little log cabin over the nascent flame, giving it air to breathe. And then you perform the final, intimate act. You lean in close and blow gently, your breath a steady, focused stream, coaxing the tiny orange sparks into a proper, confident flame. You are breathing life into the heart of your home. It's not so different from managing a modern smart thermostat, you suppose, except your thermostat smells of peat and might accidentally burn the house down if you text while using it. Once a small, steady flame is licking at the twigs, you can add the real fuel, dried blocks of dark, dense peat cut from the nearby bog last summer, or a few precious logs of birch. Wood is a valuable resource, not to be wasted on an uncontrolled blaze. The fire grows, its infant crackle becoming a mature, steady roar, pushing back the oppressive cold and the shadows. The flickering orange light dances across the dark, soot-stained roof beams and the carved faces on the support posts, painting the world in warmth and motion. It begins its work, breathing smoky life back into the hall. And now, so must you. Your day has begun. You just spent the first 20 minutes of it convincing a pile of dirt not to be so lazy. The first rays of a weak, watery sun are now filtering through the smoke hole, and the open doorways at either end of the longhouse, slicing through the smoky air in hazy golden shafts. The light isn't bright, but it's enough. The air is now filled with the groans and shuffles of the house waking up, the lowing of the cows, the fussy cries of a baby. Your eldest daughter, only 8 years old but already your shadow, is beside you, her small hands reaching for the quernstones without a word. This is the sound that will dominate the next hour, the rhythmic, scraping groan of stone on stone. The hand quern is your food processor, your bread maker, your everything. It's 2 heavy, circular stones, the top one with a handle and a hole in the center. You pour a measure of barley and rye into the hole, hardy grains that grow well in this northern climate, and your daughter begins the slow, arduous work of turning the top stone. It's a physically demanding job, a full-body workout for her small frame. Grind. Shh. Grind. Shh. The sound is a constant, a bass note to the morning. Her arms will ache, and later, so will yours. But for now, the repetitive motion is almost meditative, a physical prayer to begin the day. The fine, grayish dust of flour begins to collect around the base. You take a large clay pot, its sides blackened by countless fires, and fill it with water you and the children hauled from the stream yesterday in heavy wooden buckets. You place it on a collection of rocks at the edge of the hearth, pushing it close enough to the flames for its contents to heat. While the grain is being ground into a coarse, uneven flour, you take out a small wooden bucket. Inside is a thick, pale liquid with a sour, tangy smell. Whey, the byproduct of yesterday's cheesemaking. It's too valuable to be thrown away. This, along with a bit of water and the freshly ground flour, will become grotter, porridge, the breakfast of, well, everyone. It's not the instant, cinnamon-dusted oatmeal of the future, pre-packaged and sweetened. This is a hearty, slightly sour and intensely filling gruel, the color of wet sand. You stir it with a long wooden paddle as it thickens over the heat, the smell of cooking grains joining the ever-present smoke. Into this cauldron of beige, you might add a handful of dried summer berries for sweetness, or perhaps some chopped hazelnuts for texture, gathered from the woods in autumn. If times are good and the fishing has been successful, you'll flake in a bit of dried cod from the rafters, where it hangs stiff as a board, adding precious protein and a salty kick. It's the original meal prep, a one-pot wonder that will fuel the hard work of the morning. As you serve the porridge into simple wooden bowls, you might think about the butter. Somewhere, buried deep in the acidic, oxygen-poor environment of the nearby peat bog, is a wooden cask of butter you made last summer during the time of lush pastures. Archaeologists find this bog butter all the time, sometimes thousands of years old, preserved to a waxy, pungent consistency by the unique chemistry of the bog. It's a brilliant preservation technique. Of course, historians still debate whether it was primarily for long-term food storage, a way to age the butter to develop a sharper cheese-like flavor, or if it was a form of ritual offering to the gods of the earth. You know it simply as your emergency food supply, a creamy, tangy, slightly funky treasure buried in the earth for a hard winter. Probably best not to think about the bog part too much while you're eating breakfast. For today, a dollop of fresh butter will do, churned just 2 days ago from the precious cream of your wintering cows. It melts into the hot porridge, a pool of liquid gold in the center of the bland, grainy landscape of your breakfast bowl. The family eats quickly, wordlessly, scooping with horn or wooden spoons, fueling up. There is no time for leisurely conversation. Not when the great, unending empire of wool is waiting. The breakfast bowls are scraped clean, wiped with a piece of hard bread, and stacked away. The men, your husband, his father, the farmhands, are pulling on their leather boots and heavy cloaks, heading out to the fields to repair a fence, to the forest to check their traps and fell a tree, or down to the fjord to ready the fishing boat. Their work is hard, no doubt. But your work is a spider web, a vast, intricate network of a dozen interconnected tasks that never, ever ends. And at the absolute center of that web, holding it all together, is wool. Your home is a textile factory. It's a truth so fundamental you barely even think about it. The clothes on your back, the blankets on your bed, the brightly dyed wall hangings that are your only real form of interior decoration, and, most importantly, the sail that will power your cousin's new trading ship to foreign lands. It all begins here, with a greasy, smelly, twig-filled fleece, sheared from a flock of hardy, long-tailed sheep last spring. Today's task is spinning, But before you can spin, the wool must be prepared. You take a portion of raw, dirty fleece. The first step is scouring, cleaning the wool of its natural lanolin grease, dirt, and other things. The most effective cleaning agent is a large pot of stale urine, collected for this purpose. The ammonia it contains is a powerful degreaser. The smell is robust. After a good soak and a rinse in the stream, the wool is laid out to dry. It's just one of the many glamorous chores that make up your day. After cleaning, it must be carded. You take up 2 wooden paddles with iron teeth, called carders, and comb the clean wool between them until all the short, tangled fibers are aligned into a soft, airy cloud of potential, a rowlog. Now, finally, you can spin. You pick up a rowlog and your drop spindle, a simple but elegant tool consisting of a slender wooden stick weighted at the bottom by a stone or clay whorl. It looks a bit like a toy, the world's very first and most productive fidget spinner. You draw out a small length of wool, twist it between your fingers into a nascent thread, and hook it to the spindle. Then, with a deft flick of your wrist, you send the spindle spinning, suspended in the air. As it turns and drops, its momentum twists the fibers into a strong, continuous yarn. Your left hand expertly pays out more wool from the cloud, controlling the thickness and consistency, while your right hand keeps the spindle in motion. It's a fluid, hypnotic dance that you can do while walking, while talking, while watching the children, while supervising the ever-simmering stew pot. Your hands are never idle. They're always making, making, making. You are not alone in this. Your mother-in-law sits on a stool near the fire, her old, gnarled fingers still nimble, spinning a finer yarn for embroidery. Your daughters are sorting through a basket of newly cleaned wool, picking out the last bits of vegetable matter. Any other women in the longhouse, a cousin, a servant, are all engaged in some part of the process. And then there are the dye pots, simmering over a smaller fire just outside the longhouse door to keep the chemical smells out. Those pots are full of nature's subtle magic. A mash of woad leaves fermented just so will eventually oxidize to give a deep, rich blue. Crushed madder root imported at great expense from warmer lands will turn wool a vibrant earthy red, a color of status and wealth. Certain types of lichen, scraped from rocks in the high hills, produce surprisingly bright yellows and oranges. The air outside smells of boiling plants, wood smoke, and a faint hint of that aforementioned stale urine, a potent perfume of industry. And then there is the loom. Standing like a great silent sentinel against one wall is the warp-weighted loom, a tall, vertical frame. The vertical threads, the warp, are tied to the top beam and hang down, held taut not by a second beam, but by a row of heavy, hand-molded stones or baked clay loom weights, each one tied to a bundle of threads at the bottom. The occasional clack of these weights knocking against each other is as constant a sound as the grinding of the quern or the spinning of the spindle. Weaving is a slow, painstaking process. You pass the weft thread, wound onto a shuttle, back and forth between the warp threads, beating each new line tightly into place with a wooden sword. It's a full-body workout, requiring you to constantly walk back and forth along the width of the fabric, bending and stretching. And, if you wish to create one of the complex diamond twill patterns so prized in your culture, you must manually lift and separate different sets of threads with each pass, a feat of memory and concentration. These textiles are your family's true currency. A finely woven, brightly colored tunic is a status symbol, the Viking Age equivalent of a luxury car or a designer handbag. The strong, hardy, and waterproof sailcloth, a textile so complex and labor-intensive to produce that a single large sail might represent years of work for all the women in a household, is the engine of the entire Norse economy of trade and raiding. It all begins here, in the smoky dimness of your home, by your hands. Scholars today try to piece together the lost world of Viking textiles from tiny, muddy fragments found in graves, debating the complexity of the patterns, the skill of the weavers, and the social importance of cloth production. You don't know you are a subject of future debate. You just know that if you don't produce enough cloth, your family will be cold this winter, and your husband will have nothing of value to trade for the salt, iron, and honest stones you need from foreign lands. The weight of it all is heavier than any loom weight. By midday, your back aches from the loom, and your fingers are raw from the friction of the wool fibers, though permanently softened by the lanolin. The sun is at its highest point, which in these northern lands doesn't always mean very high, but it's time to move to the world outside the longhouse doors, the world of the Kolgård. The Kolgård, or cabbage patch, is your domain. It's a small, fenced-in kitchen garden near the house, a little oasis of cultivation in a world that can feel wild and untamed. It's not a sprawling field of monoculture. It's a chaotic but productive jumble of hardy vegetables, legumes, and essential herbs. You kneel in the dark, rich soil, pulling up stubborn weeds that seem to grow with a supernatural vigor. Your fingers can identify plants by touch and smell alone. The sturdy stalks of kale and broad beans, the sharp, pungent leaves of onions and garlic, the feathery tops of carrots, though these aren't the bright orange carrots of the future, but rather more unpredictable shades of pale white or purple. You gather what you'll need for the evening meal, placing the vegetables into a woven birch bark basket. Then, you move to the herb section, a living pharmacy. Here grows dill and coriander for flavoring the eternal stew, but also nettle, which you use for both a nutritious soup and a remedy for aching joints, yarrow for staunching the blood of a cut, and angelica for soothing a bad cough or a troubled stomach. Your knowledge of these plants, passed down from your mother and her mother before her in an unbroken oral tradition, makes you the family's doctor and pharmacist. It's a knowledge based on generations of trial, error, and close observation. From the garden, you can hear the insistent bleating of the goats and the deeper bleating of the sheep. Milking is next. You take a clean wooden pail and head to the small animal pen. The she-goat knows the routine and stands patiently. The milk jets into the bucket in warm, rhythmic streams. This milk is precious. Some will be drunk fresh by the children, but most of it must be processed. Back inside, you'll let it sit for the cream to rise. That cream will be poured into a plunger churn, a tall, narrow wooden vessel, and you, or one of your daughters, will spend what feels like an eternity plunging a wooden dasher up and down, up and down, up and down, until the sloshing sound changes, and solid, golden flecks of butter begin to form amidst the sloshing buttermilk. The work is monotonous and utterly exhausting. The remaining milk will have rennet added and will be set aside to become simple, fresh cheese. Preservation is the invisible constant task that underpins your entire existence. Summer's bounty is fleeting and must be captured. Berries must be picked and dried on wooden trays in the sun, if there is any. Fish must be gutted, and then either salted heavily or air-dried on huge wooden racks until they are as hard as wood. Meat must be smoked or salted. Nothing can be wasted. Every scrap, every ounce of fat, every fish head for soup stock has a purpose. This relentless focus on preservation even extends to your clothes. This is why you have an ironing board. Sort of. It's a large, smooth whalebone plaque, found by archaeologists in graves and lovingly dubbed a plank smoother. Paired with a heated, rounded glass stone, called a linen smoother, you use it to press your linen garments. It's not about looking sharp for the village feast. Pressing the linen fibers flat makes the garment more resistant to dirt and wear, extending its life. It's just another form of preservation. Another chore in the endless cycle of making things last. By late afternoon, your thoughts turn to another fundamental element: water. You've used most of the water you hauled yesterday for cooking, drinking, and washing. Now you must replenish it. You and your daughters grab the heavy wooden yokes that rest across your shoulders, a large wooden bucket dangling from a rope on each side. The path to the stream is well worn, a groove in the earth carved by the feet of generations of women before you. The journey itself isn't long, but the work is brutal. You fill the buckets to the brim, the icy water sloshing over the sides and soaking your leather shoes. Then comes the walk back, uphill. The yoke digs into your shoulders, and every step is a strained, jarring effort. Your neck and back muscles scream and protest. You do this every single day. The concept of turning a tap and having fresh, clean water magically appear is a fantasy more outlandish than any story of a dragon hoarding gold. The long day finally begins to wind down. The sky outside is a deep violet, and the world is shrinking back to the warm, fire-lit circle of the longhouse. The final meal of the day, the natmal, or night meal, is bubbling away in the great cauldron over the hearth. Tonight, it's a thick stew of the kale and onions you picked earlier, fortified with chunks of salted mutton that have been simmering for hours to soften them, and thickened with more barley. The smell is rich and savory, a comforting aroma that promises to fill bellies and ward off the night's chill. As the family gathers around the fire to eat from their bowls, another of your most important roles comes to the forefront, making a soft, metallic sound as you move. Hanging from a leather thong on the belt of your dress, alongside your utility knife and a pouch for your sewing needles, is a set of iron keys. They jangle softly, a sound of subtle but undeniable authority. These are the keys to the large carved wooden chests that hold the stores of flour and dried meats, the presses that hold the family's precious linens, and any strong boxes where silver coins or jewelry might be kept. They are a powerful and visible symbol. You are the Husfreya, the lady of the house, the keeper of the keys. This isn't just a symbolic title. In this society, a married woman of your status holds significant legal standing within the domestic sphere. While your husband may be the public face of the farmstead, you are its manager, its quartermaster, its CEO. You control the distribution of all household resources. He can't simply take food from the stores. He must ask you. These keys signify that the household's wealth, its ability to survive the winter, is under your protection and your administration. If your husband were to treat you poorly or wrongfully divorce you, the law, as it is understood, is on your side, allowing you to claim a significant portion of this household property as your own. It's not exactly modern feminist liberation, but it's a long way from being powerless property. This keychain with its jangling fobs is your scepter of office, the tangible proof of your authority. Of course, Historians and archaeologists still debate how much day-to-day power this symbol truly translated into. Was the keeper of the keys an equal partner in a domestic enterprise? Or was she a high-status manager in a fundamentally patriarchal system, her power ultimately dependent on her husband's goodwill? The truth is likely somewhere in the murky middle, varying from one longhouse and one relationship to the next. For you, the keys are simply a weight on your hip, a constant physical reminder of your immense and heavy responsibility. After the meal, the last of the day's light long gone, the work is still not quite done. By the flickering, greasy light of a small stone lamp, a shallow bowl filled with fish oil or animal fat with a moss wick floating in it, you take up your mending. A tear in your son's tunic, a thin patch on your husband's breeches that needs reinforcing. The needle moves in and out, a small, repetitive, comforting motion. The men might be carving a piece of wood for a tool handle or sharpening a blade on a whetstone. Your mother-in-law might be telling an old story, her voice a low murmur against the crackle of the fire, a tale of gods and giants, of tricksters and heroes, a story she heard from her own grandmother. Remember the delicate work of coaxing the fire back to life this morning? That seems a lifetime ago now. Finally, the fire is banked for the night, smothered carefully with ashes to preserve the precious embers until morning. You take your keys and perform the final ritual of the day, walking to the great wooden chests and ensuring their locks are secure. The sound of the iron locks clicking into place is a sound of finality, of a day's work completed and its fruits protected. You make your way back to the sleeping platform, your body a symphony of aches, your shoulders from the water yoke, your lower back from the loom, your fingers raw from the wool, your arms tired from the churn. You slide under the heavy wool and animal skin blankets, the familiar cold of the longhouse already beginning to creep back in as the fire dies down. The sounds of sleep fill the hall once more. The wind whistles through an unseen crack in the wall, a mournful northern sound. You close your eyes. You don't dream of glorious battles or voyages to new lands. You dream of wool that never runs out, of a fire that never dims, of a pot that never empties. You fall asleep, not with a sense of completion, but with the quiet, bone-deep knowledge that tomorrow the darkness will come again, and you will rise to meet it, with the cold floor on your feet and the fate of the embers in your hands, and you will do it all over again. Life in a peaceful Japanese village during the long Edo period. You wake not to an alarm, but to a subtle yet absolute change in the light. A soft, pearlescent gray has begun to replace the deep indigo of the night, filtering noiselessly through the delicate paper of the shoji screens that form the walls of your small room. The light is just enough to trace the neat, parallel lines of the woven tatami mats that floor the entire house, and to catch the dark, comforting shape of the heavy wooden beams of the ceiling above. There's a coolness in the air, a clean, earthy scent of damp soil, wet moss, and fragrant cedar wood that is the signature perfume of a Japanese morning. You lie still for a moment, wrapped in your futon, listening. The house is quiet, but it is not silent. You can hear the slow, even breathing of your family, your parents, and 2 younger siblings, all asleep in this same large, multi-purpose room, their futons laid out in a familiar constellation on the floor. Beyond the paper walls, the first adventurous bird has begun to tentatively try out its song, a series of clear, liquid notes that drop into the profound silence. This is a peaceful time, not just the peace of the early morning, but a peace that has settled over the entire nation, a vast 200-year quiet imposed by the shogun in the great, distant city of Edo. They call it the Taihei, the Great Peace. For your grandparents and their grandparents before them, the rhythm of life has been this: the rising of the sun, the turning of the 4 distinct seasons, the planting and harvesting of the rice. It's a predictable, tightly woven existence, a life of duty and deep, comforting routine. Slowly, you begin your own day's routine. With movements that are economical and quiet, you fold your thin quilt and padded futon. You store them away in a large wooden closet built into the wall, the oshire. In a few swift, silent motions, the communal bedroom has transformed back into the main living space of the house. It's the original studio apartment, a model of functional elegance and space-saving design born of necessity. You slide open the heavy outer wooden panels, the amado, that serve as the home's nighttime armor against weather and spirits. The soft gray light floods the room, officially beginning the day. You are a farmer, a Hayakusho. On paper, in the grand Confucian social order dictated by the ruling samurai class, this makes you a member of the second most respected group in society, right below the warriors themselves. Farmers, the ideology goes, produce the food that sustains everyone. You are the honorable, virtuous backbone of the nation. It's a nice thought, a kind of poetry that feels rather hollow when the tax collector arrives with his ledgers and his abacus. The truth of your life is written not in Confucian texts, but in the permanent calluses on your hands, the ingrained dirt under your fingernails, and the slight, constant ache in your lower back. Your first task of the morning is to step into your simple straw sandals, the waraji that you wove yourself, and fetch the day's first and most essential resource. The village well is just a short walk away. As you approach, you see a neighbor, Old Lady Tanaka, already there. You exchange quiet bows, deeper than a city dweller might give, and soft, murmured good mornings. These small but essential rituals of deference and respect are the threads that stitch the village together into a coherent whole. You lower the wooden bucket into the dark, stone-lined shaft and pull on the rope. The water is achingly cold, a shock that chases away the last vestiges of sleep. Back inside, you pour some of the water into a basin to wash your face and rinse your mouth. You clean your teeth with a small, frayed stick of willow and a bit of salt, a simple but effective dental routine. You don't practice ohaguro, the custom of blackening one's teeth that many married women in your village have adopted. It is said to be a mark of beauty and marital fidelity, using a concoction of iron filings soaked in tea and sake. You've heard it has the fringe benefit of protecting the teeth from decay, a form of cosmetic dentistry that is far more practical than it sounds. You're not married yet, so your teeth remain white. You figure true beauty for your family is a well-thatched roof that doesn't leak and a storehouse full of rice to last the winter. Now, you move to the heart of the house, the earthen stove in the kitchen area, the kamado. It's a simple but efficient construction of clay and plaster, with 2 openings, one for feeding it fuel, the other to hold a cooking pot. You carefully arrange a bundle of dried twigs and leaves you gathered yesterday, and coax a flame to life with a spark from a flint and steel. Soon, a small iron pot of water is heating up, and you reach for the morning's essential ingredients, which are always the same. There is rice, of course, the gleaming white treasure from your own fields. There's a small scoop of fermented soybean paste, miso, from a large clay crock in the corner that exudes a rich, savory smell. And there are some pickled radish, takwan, their bright yellow color a sharp contrast to the earthen tones of the kitchen. Breakfast will be simple, but nourishing. A bowl of hot steamed rice, today mixed with a bit of millet to make the precious rice supply last longer. A thin, salty miso soup, perhaps with a few scraps of forage seaweed or a sliver of onion to give it body. And the sharp, crunchy pickles to cleanse the palate. It's a meal that has remained almost unchanged for centuries, designed for pure fuel, not for frivolous fun. Historians of a later era will continue to argue about the true quality and variety of the peasant diet during the long Edo period. Was it a grim, monotonous subsistence on the edge of starvation, as the tax records sometimes suggest? Or did the relative isolation of villages lead to a rich and varied use of local wild plants, mountain vegetables, and ingenious preservation techniques, creating a surprisingly healthy and diverse diet invisible to the official records? For you, today, it is simply breakfast. The flavor is familiar, comforting, and enough to power the day's hard work. With the first simple meal of the day finished and the bowls washed and put carefully away, you dress for the fields. Your clothes are not the vibrant silk kimonos depicted in the woodblock prints that sometimes find their way into the hands of the village headman. They are practical, hardy garments of rough hemp or, more recently, cotton, which is becoming more common. They are dyed a deep, pragmatic indigo, a color that masks dirt well and is easy to produce. The cloth is rough against your skin, a little stiff, but it is built for durability, not for comfort. Every scrap of fabric is precious. Worn-out clothes are never thrown away. They are patched with painstaking care, then re-dyed, then cut down to make clothes for children, then repurposed into cleaning rags or aprons, and finally, at the very end of their long, useful life, they might be burned, with their ash used as fertilizer for the garden. Nothing is wasted in this cyclical economy. As you step outside the sliding door of your thatch-roofed farmhouse, a minka, the village is fully awake. The air hums with a low-level, purposeful activity. You can hear the distant rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer on his anvil, the steady thud, thump of someone pounding rice in a large wooden mortar to polish it, the gentle chatter of your neighbors as they prepare for their own day's labor. Your path takes you past the small, sacred grove of ancient trees that houses the village shrine, dedicated to the local kami, the tutelary spirit or deity that watches over this specific piece of land, this specific community. You pause for just a second, clap your hands twice to get its attention, and bow your head in a brief, silent prayer for a good day's work, for strong backs, and for protection from misfortune. Misfortune, in your world, is a constant, lurking threat. It comes in many forms. Drought that cracks the earth of the paddies, floods from a typhoon that can wash away a season's work in an hour, a sudden sickness that sweeps through the village, or a blight of insects that devours the precious rice plants. Your greatest social protection against these calamities is your gonin gumi, your 5-family group. This is the foundational unit of your village society, a system of collective responsibility and mutual surveillance imposed by the Tokugawa government. Your family is tied by law and custom to the 4 other households nearest to you. You are responsible for their behavior, their taxes, their potential crimes, and they are responsible for yours. If one household's head of family gambles away the money for his taxes, the other four are on the hook to make up the difference. It's an incredibly effective system for ensuring social order and tax compliance. Think of it as a neighborhood watch that can also get you exiled, because your neighbor, Kenji, has a revolutionary new idea for a puppet show that the local magistrate deems as subversive. This system creates a complicated web of intensely intimate relationships. On one hand, it fosters an almost suffocating sense of community. You help your neighbors mend their roof after a storm, and they help you at the grueling time of harvest. You celebrate the births of their children as if they were your own, and you mourn their parents' deaths with a deep and genuine sorrow. On the other hand, everyone knows everyone else's business. There are no secrets in a gonengumi. A lazy worker, a petty thief, a family that quarrels too loudly, they aren't just a private nuisance. They are a direct threat to the group's collective survival and honor. Academics and historians will debate to this day whether the gonengumi system was primarily a tool of state oppression, a brilliant method for keeping the peasantry in line through fear and peer pressure, or if it was actually embraced by villagers as a pragmatic and welcome framework for mutual support and self-governance in a harsh world. Like most things, the answer is probably a bit of both. It's the reason you give your neighbor a deeper, more meaningful bow this morning. It is part respect and part a gentle, unspoken reminder that you are all, quite literally, in this together. Then there's the strangest, most lucrative, and most private aspect of your morning work. As you head towards the family's rice paddies, you might pass a man with 2 large, sealed wooden buckets balanced on a yoke across his shoulders. He bows, and you bow in return, both of you trying very hard not to breathe too deeply through your noses. He is the collector of night soil. In the crowded cities like Edo and Osaka, human waste is a valuable commodity, a traded good, meticulously collected from households and sold to farmers like you to use as fertilizer for your fields. In a self-sufficient village like yours, you don't need to buy it. You simply use your own. Your house has a simple privy, and the waste is collected and carefully composted with ash from the hearth and earth from the garden. This composted material, rich in nitrogen, returns to the soil to grow the very food you eat. It is a closed-loop system of profound and simple ecological efficiency. It's the original organic farming movement, born not of modern lifestyle ideology, but of pure, simple necessity, and a deep-seated belief that nothing should ever be wasted. You have, in essence, a subscription to your own high-end, bespoke fertilizer service. Today's work is in the water. The rice paddies, your family's most precious asset, stretch out before you, a patchwork quilt of shimmering, watery mirrors under the growing sun. Each small paddy is separated by narrow raised earth banks that you must walk along with careful balance. Depending on the season, the work changes, but it is always demanding. In the early spring, you would be bent over for hours, your back screaming in protest, meticulously transplanting the tiny, bright green rice seedlings from their nursery bed into the flooded field, row by perfect row. In the late summer and early autumn, you would be harvesting, cutting the stalks with a small, sharp sickle. Today, in the heat of midsummer, the work is weeding. You hitch up your indigo trousers and wade into the calf-deep, lukewarm water. The thick, dark mud squishes up between your toes, a feeling you've known and have not always loved since you were a small child learning your trade. You move slowly, methodically, along the precise rows of growing rice plants. your eyes scanning for the intrusive green of a competing weed. Your hands, submerged in the water, search and pull, a constant rhythmic plucking motion. You pull the weeds out by the root and toss them onto the bank to wither and die in the sun. The sun beats down on your wide-brimmed straw hat, which provides a welcome circle of shade. Dragonflies, brilliant flashes of iridescent blue and green, dart and hover over the still surface of the water, hunting for mosquitoes. Small frogs plop into the deeper water as you approach. It is hard, monotonous, back-breaking labor. But there is a strange, profound peace to be found in the rhythm, in the close and intimate connection to the earth, the water, the sun, and the living plants that are the sole focus of your world. The fruits of this labor, you are always keenly aware, are not entirely your own. This is the central, unchangeable fact of your life. A significant portion of the rice you grow, often as much as 40 to 50%, does not belong to you. It is the nengu, the annual land tax, which you must pay in rice, not money, to the local daimyo, the feudal lord who governs this province on behalf of the distant shogun. Your village has a headman, the nanushi, usually one of the most prosperous and respected farmers, and it is his unenviable job to assess each family's harvest and collect the tax. Your entire year is a gamble, a race against weather and pests to produce enough rice to pay the tax and feed your family through the long, lean winter months. A good harvest means a year of relative security. A bad harvest, that's a conversation no one wants to have. The standard measure of rice is the koku, the amount supposedly needed to feed one person for 1 year. It's a neat, tidy unit of measurement that feels a lot less neat when it's your family's dinner being carefully measured and then carted away to the Lord's granary. As the sun reaches its zenith, burning directly overhead, you and the other villagers take a well-earned break for the midday meal. You don't trudge all the way back to the farmhouse. Instead, you find a patch of shade under a willow tree at the edge of the paddy. You unwrap a simple lunch that you carried with you, a few cold rice balls, onigiri, perhaps with a single intensely sour pickled plum, and umeboshi, pressed into the center for flavor. It is a moment of rest and quiet conversation. This is where the real life of the village happens. The headman might discuss the state of the shared irrigation ditches. An older woman might offer a herbal remedy for another's child's persistent cough. News and gossip are exchanged in low, comfortable murmurs. Stories are also told, not just of the goings-on in the village, but of the unseen world that exists alongside your own. Everyone believes in kami and yokai, the countless spirits, ghosts, and supernatural creatures that inhabit the mountains, the forests, the streams, and even old, forgotten household objects. You are particularly wary of kitsune, the intelligent and often mischievous fox spirits. Everyone in your village knows the story of a man from the next valley who suddenly began acting strangely, craving only fried tofu, speaking in a high, formal voice, and claiming to be a messenger from the great rice god, Inari. It was declared a classic case of kitsunetsuki, fox possession. A local wandering shaman had to be called to perform a rather loud and expensive rite of exorcism. You don't find this particularly outlandish. The world is a mysterious place, and the line between the physical and the spiritual is thin and porous. Believing a fox spirit might borrow your neighbor's body for a week to complain about the quality of the local tofu isn't much stranger than believing a man in a distant castle in a city you'll never see is entitled to half of your back-breaking work. It's just a different kind of tax on your reality. the afternoon's work shifts from the hot open fields back to the relative cool of the farmhouse. There are endless small tasks to be done. You might spend an hour or two at a simple backstrap loom, a primitive but effective device, weaving hemp or cotton fiber into cloth. The rhythmic clack-clack of the loom is a domestic, comforting sound. Or you might sit in the open doorway, letting a small breeze cool your skin, your hands busy plaiting rice straw into sandals, ropes, mats, or even a new rain cape, a mino. These waraji sandals, the everyday footwear of the peasant class, wear out quickly on the rough ground, and a constant supply is needed. You think of them as the disposable razors of footwear, each one a temporary solution, destined for the compost heap. You also tend to your small kitchen garden, a plot of land that is just as important as the rice paddies. Here, you grow vegetables that aren't taxed by the samurai: daikon radishes, cucumbers, eggplants, onions, and various greens. These supplement your diet and are your responsibility alone. The art of pickling is essential. Almost anything that can't be eaten fresh is preserved in salt, miso, or rice bran, ensuring you have vegetables to eat through the winter when the garden is barren. The sharp, funky, fermented smell of the pickling crocks is a permanent fixture in a corner of your house, a scent of foresight and survival. As dusk begins to settle, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and deep purple, the final chores of the day begin. The most important of these is the bath, the furo. A fire is lit under an iron cauldron to heat the water. The Japanese bath, even in a humble farmhouse, is not just about getting clean. It is a deeply ingrained ritual of purification and relaxation. The same water is used by the entire family in a strict order of seniority. First, your father or any honored guest, then the men and boys, and finally, the women and girls. You wash and rinse yourself with a bucket of cool water outside the tub before slipping into the deep, wooden bath. The water is steaming hot, almost scalping, but as you sink in, the heat soaks into your tired, aching muscles, washing away the dirt and the aches of the long day. For a few precious minutes, you are weightless, suspended in the simple, profound luxury of hot water. The evening meal is much like breakfast, though perhaps the miso soup will have a few more vegetables in it tonight. And if you are lucky, you might share a small portion of grilled fish caught in the local stream. You eat together as a family, sitting on cushions around the central sunken hearth, the irori, its small, friendly fire casting a warm, flickering glow on your faces. With the meal over and the house sealed for the night against the cool night air, the darkness outside is absolute and profound. There is no street lighting, no ambient glow from distant cities. The only light comes from the dying embers of the irori and perhaps a single small oil lamp that gives off a smoky, dim light and a fishy smell. Oil is expensive. Most of your life is lived by the rhythms of the sun. In this quiet, fire-lit time, your family might talk softly, mending tools or patching clothes. Your grandfather might tell an old folk tale, his voice a low, comforting rumble in the near darkness. Finally, you unroll your futon once more onto the clean-smelling tatami. You lie down, your body heavy with the day's good, hard work. The only sounds are the gentle snores of your sleeping family, the distant, rhythmic clack-clack of the wooden clappers carried by the village fire patrol making their nightly rounds, and the high-pitched, endless chorus of crickets outside your paper walls. You think of the rice, standing silent and dark in the moonlit paddies, slowly, imperceptibly growing, swelling with the water and the earth. Your entire life is tied to it. Its rhythm is your rhythm. And in this great enforced peace, that is enough. You close your eyes and drift into a deep, dreamless sleep, secure in the simple knowledge that tomorrow, if the gods and the shogun are willing, will be very much like today. The slow, patient work of the first female doctors in the Victorian era. You wake before the sun, in a narrow room tucked away at the top of a tall, soot-stained London townhouse. The air is chilly, carrying the city's signature perfume, a complex blend of damp wool, coal smoke, horse manure, and the faint, sweet smell of baking bread from a shop down the street. For a brief, luxurious moment, you are just a woman in a bed, warm under a heavy patchwork quilt, your body sunk into the familiar contours of the mattress. But then, full awareness returns. A slow, methodical tide bringing with it not just the new day, but the full, weighty reality of what you are. You are a doctor, a physician, and you are a woman, in the year of our Lord 1870. This combination is still considered by most of polite society, and a large portion of the medical establishment, to be somewhere between a chromosomal anomaly, a breach of social etiquette, and an outright contradiction in terms. Slowly, you rise and light a single oil lamp on your bedside table. Its soft, yellow glow pushes back the pre-dawn gloom, revealing a room that is more study and laboratory than a lady's boudoir. The walls are lined with bookshelves, crammed with heavy, leather-bound volumes that are your constant companions and silent tutors. Gray's Anatomy, with its breathtakingly detailed plates. A dog-eared copy of Carpenter's Principles of Human Physiology, treatises on materia medica and public health. On a small, sturdy desk sits a beautiful brass microscope under a glass bell jar, a precious tool of science. Next to it is a neat stack of case notes from yesterday's patients. There are no frills here, no vanity tables laden with trinkets, no fashion plates pinned to the wall. Your life has been necessarily pared down to its essentials. The relentless pursuit of this single, consuming goal has required a monastic level of focus. You dress in the quiet semi-darkness. Your morning ritual is a study in calculated practicality. There is no tightly laced corset designed to rearrange your anatomy into a fashionable silhouette. There is no cumbersome crinoline or bustle to navigate. Instead, you put on a simple dark wool skirt that allows for easy movement, a crisp, high-collared shirtwaist of stark white linen, and a sturdy, fitted jacket with sensible pockets. It's a somber, almost masculine uniform, a style that projects sobriety and seriousness. It is also a kind of armor. Your appearance, you know, must be impeccable, professional, utterly beyond reproach. Any perceived deviation, any hint of feminine frivolity, would be seized upon by your critics as proof of your unsuitability for the grave and serious calling of medicine. You are not just getting dressed. You are consciously constructing a persona, preparing for a day of intense public and professional inspection. Downstairs in the small kitchen at the back of the house, you prepare a simple, functional breakfast. A pot of strong black tea, brewed until it is dark and bracing, and a single slice of dry toast. You stand by the window as you eat, watching the city slowly come to life. A milkman's cart rattles past, its churns clinking. A chimney sweep, small and shrouded in soot, trudges by on his way to work. You look over your notes from yesterday again. Mrs. Peterson, a draper's wife, with her persistent bronchitis, likely exacerbated by the dampness of their rooms. The two small Jones children, both now covered in the telltale spots of measles, their feverish bodies huddled together for comfort. A young seamstress from a nearby workshop with the characteristic white swelling of tuberculous arthritis in her knee, a painful condition born of long hours of cramped, repetitive work in a poorly ventilated room. Your patients are almost exclusively women and children. This is the patient population deemed suitable for a female physician. It is a grudging concession, a belief that a woman's natural sphere of influence is domestic. You are allowed, by a silent and often contemptuous consensus, to care for your own sex and their offspring, as if your medical knowledge were a specialized domestic skill, like advanced needlepoint or the management of a particularly difficult pudding. It is, you know, a door that was left ajar by accident, and you, along with a tiny, scattered band of other women like you, have wedged your entire life into that small opening. You think, as you often do, of Elizabeth Blackwell, the woman who carved the path you now walk. You remember reading the story of her struggle to gain a medical education, how she was finally accepted into Geneva Medical College in rural New York, only because the all-male faculty, unsure what to do with her application, put it to a student vote. The students, assuming it was a prank from a rival college, voted unanimously to admit her, for the sheer fun of it. The punchline, of course, is that she graduated in 1849, first in her class. That story has become a kind of founding myth for you. You have had to cultivate that same sense of quiet, stubborn, unshakable purpose. It is the steel spine that holds you upright against the daily onslaught of skepticism and outright hostility. This work isn't just a career. It's a crusade, fought in small, quiet examination rooms and dreary tenements. One patient, one diagnosis, one small victory at a time. The world doesn't think you belong here. Your entire day will be a slow, patient, and polite demonstration that the world is profoundly, unequivocally wrong. Before you can see your first patient of the day, you must perform another vital, quiet ritual, compounding your own medicines. You do not have the luxury of simply writing a prescription and sending your patient off to the nearest chemist. Many pharmacists, considering you an illegitimate practitioner, would refuse to fill it, questioning your qualifications or simply unwilling to support a female rival. And for many of your working-class patients, a private chemist's bill is an unaffordable luxury. So, by necessity, you have become a physician, a pharmacist, and a dispenser all in one. It is a burden, but it is also a form of independence. You move to a specific locked cabinet in your consulting room. When you open the doors, a complex aroma wafts out, the scent of your trade. Bitter herbs, astringent chemical powders, and the faint, sweet smell of alcohol tinctures. On the neat shelves are dozens of glass-stoppered bottles containing the raw ingredients of the Victorian pharmacopoeia. There is powdered foxglove, digitalis, a potent but dangerous drug for a weak or fluttering heart. There is willow bark, rich in salicin, for treating fevers and pain. There is bromide of potassium for frayed nerves and hysteria, and the precious quinine for the agues and malarial fevers that still linger in the marshier parts of the city. You also have large jars of what are generically called tonics, iron-rich compounds to combat the chlorosis, the green sickness, an anemia so common in young women whose diets are poor and whose lives are lived almost entirely indoors, away from the sunlight and fresh air. Today, your first task is to make up a cough syrup for the draper's wife with bronchitis. With the precise, deliberate movements of a chemist, you take a small, beautiful brass balance scale and carefully weigh out your ingredients onto little squares of paper. there is powdered licorice root to soothe the throat, ipecacuanha, a powerful expectorant derived from a South American plant, to help clear the lungs, and a small, carefully measured amount of paregoric, which is a camphorated tincture of opium. This last ingredient is for soothing the racking cough and, more importantly, helping the exhausted patient get some restorative sleep. Opium is everywhere in Victorian England, the active ingredient in dozens of popular patent medicines, from soothing syrups for teething babies to nerve tonics for anxious ladies. It is a casual, over-the-counter remedy for the myriad aches and anxieties of modern industrial life. You, however, are keenly aware of its power and its potential for harm and addiction. You use it with extreme care and respect. You tip the powders into a heavy porcelain mortar and begin to grind them together with a pestle, breaking them down into a fine, homogeneous dust. The soft, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the pestle against the porcelain is a meditative sound in the quiet room. When the powders are fully blended, you add a little honey and warm water, mixing it all into a thick, dark, syrupy suspension. You decant the mixture into a small, clean glass bottle. Push a cork stopper firmly into its neck, and then take up your pen. On a small paper label, you carefully handwrite the instructions. 1 teaspoon, as needed for the cough. No more than 4 times in a day. This little bottle, this entire process, represents a whole world of necessary self-sufficiency. Scholars of medicine and gender in the future will debate the exact relationship between these early female doctors and the established male-dominated pharmaceutical profession. Was this self-compounding a rebellious act of professional independence, a deliberate skirting of the male medical hierarchy? Or was it simply a practical necessity, born of their professional isolation and their desire to provide affordable care to their patients? For you, it's just Tuesday morning. You're simply ensuring Mrs. Peterson gets the medicine she needs by any and every means necessary. As you work, you think with a sigh about the other, more eccentric remedies your patients sometimes ask you about. The back pages of every newspaper are filled with them. Advertisements trumpet the miraculous rejuvenating effects of electric corsets, the use of mild arsenic-laced complexion wafers for achieving a fashionably pale and delicate look, or the consumption of expensive potions containing gold or phosphorus to restore lost vitality. It is a world awash in clever marketing, magical thinking, and dangerous pseudoscience. Your practice, by contrast, is a quiet, sometimes lonely, island of methodical observation-based science. You don't offer miracle cures. You offer careful listening, gentle examination, and medicine, grounded in the small but growing body of solid, verifiable knowledge your profession has managed to acquire. It feels less like fighting a glorious war for science, and more like being the only sober person at a very loud, very drunk party who keeps politely insisting that, no, jumping off the roof will probably not enable you to fly. The first bell of the morning rings, a quiet, high-pitched jingle from a spring-loaded bell on the front door. You smooth your apron, take a deep, fortifying breath, and open the door to your small, clean waiting room. The first patient of the day is a young mother named Mrs. Evans, a nervous, bird-like woman who works as a lady's maid. Her young son, Thomas, aged about 6, is with her, clutching her hand. He is pale and has dark circles under his eyes. Your consulting room is deliberately designed to be calming. It's spotlessly clean and well lit by a large window that looks out onto a small patch of garden. The walls are a plain, neutral color, The furniture is simple but solid. A sturdy wooden desk where you write your notes, a comfortable upright chair for the patient, and a padded examination couch covered in a clean linen sheet. It looks less like a forbidding medical office or a frightening surgical theater, and more like a tidy, scholarly sitting room. The only signs of your profession are your medical bag, the cabinet of medicines, and the books on the shelves. You begin by talking, not just launching into questions about Thomas's symptoms, but by asking Mrs. Evans about her work, their home, their lives. You are practicing what will one day be called social medicine, or a holistic approach, understanding that a person's health is inextricably linked to their environment, their diet, their work, their poverty. You listen patiently as she tells you about their cramped, damp basement rooms, the single shared privy for the entire building, her long hours of work. Then you turn your gentle attention to the boy. You don't loom over him. You kneel down so you are at his level. You ask him what he likes to play. After he shyly answers, you ask if you can look at him. With his mother's help, you have him remove his shirt. You take out your monaural stethoscope, a simple, elegant wooden tube. Many male physicians still consider this instrument an affront to their innate diagnostic skills, a newfangled gadget that comes between them and their patient. They prefer to press their own ear directly to the patient's chest, a practice obviously fraught with complications and social awkwardness when the patient is female. For you, the stethoscope is an essential tool not just for diagnosis, but for maintaining a space of professional modesty and propriety. It allows you to listen to a patient's heart and lungs from a respectable, comfortable distance. You warm the cold, flared end of the stethoscope in your hands before placing it gently on Thomas's small, thin chest. You close your eyes and listen, your expression calm and focused. The world of sounds inside the human body is a whole secret language you have painstakingly learned to interpret. You hear the telltale whoop as he inhales, and you know, even before the other signs confirm it, that this is pertussis, whooping cough. After the examination, you explain your diagnosis to Mrs. Evans in simple, clear terms, showing her a diagram of the lungs in one of your anatomy books. You don't just hand her a bottle and send her away. You are not just treating an illness. You are educating your patient, demystifying the body, empowering her with knowledge. Your practice is built on this foundation of radical empathy and patient communication. You're basically running the world's smallest, most overqualified, and completely free public health seminar, right here in your front parlor. You give her instructions on how to ease his coughing fits and what to watch for, and you promise to call on them in a few days. In the small gap between appointments, you have a moment to consider your professional isolation. The medical community is a brotherhood, literally. The medical journals, the professional societies, the weekly meetings at the teaching hospitals, where interesting cases are discussed, they are all exclusively male spaces. A few years ago, the British Medical Association, in a fit of panic over the trickle of qualified women appearing on the medical register, formally voted to ban all women from membership. It wasn't a debate on merit, it was a slamming of a heavy oaken door. You cannot simply consult with a colleague down the street about a difficult case. To them, you are a rival at best, a charlatan at worst. So you and your fellow female physicians, a tiny, scattered sisterhood, have had to create your own network. You write long, detailed letters to your old classmates, who are now practicing in other cities like Manchester or Edinburgh, or even further afield in America or India. You share your most puzzling case notes, ask for advice, and offer support and encouragement. This epistolary network is your professional lifeline, a secret shadow medical society conducted through the penny post. Historians of medicine and sociology will later call this a foundational element of early female professionalism, a classic example of creating alternative support structures in the face of institutional exclusion. But for you, in the quiet of your study, it just feels like writing to your friends, the only people on earth who truly understand what your life is like. This isolation leads to strange and sometimes deeply frustrating situations. Just last month, you diagnosed a woman with an ovarian cyst that required surgery. You had to refer her to a male surgeon at a local hospital, one known to be slightly more tolerant than his peers. You sent a long, detailed letter with your diagnosis and your reasons for it. The surgeon, after seeing the patient, performed his own perfunctory examination and sent you back a condescending one-sentence note. "Madam, I have seen your patient and will handle the matter as I see fit." He addressed you as if you were a concerned but ultimately unqualified neighborhood gossip, not a fellow medical professional. The deep, wearying frustration of not being taken seriously, even when you are right, is a constant, corrosive companion. You are playing the same game as the men, but they seem to possess the only copy of the rulebook, which they change whenever it suits them. The midday meal is a simple affair, a bowl of soup and a piece of bread, taken at your desk while you write up your morning's case notes. Your handwriting is clear, precise, and scientific, every observation recorded. After lunch, you pack your medical bag. It is heavy, made of sturdy black leather, its brass clasps polished. It contains your stethoscope, a thermometer, another tool of new objective science, bandages, a small surgical kit with lancets and needles in a velvet roll, and a selection of the medicines you've prepared. Your afternoons are reserved for house calls, for venturing out into the vast, sprawling, unequal city. Today, you are heading into a part of London far from the fashionable squares, a rookery in the East End, a tangled maze of narrow, unpaved alleyways and towering, dilapidated tenement buildings that seem to lean against each other for support. The air here is thick and soupy, a miasma of factory smoke, tannery effluents, unwashed bodies, and poor sanitation. The smell is a physical presence. You step carefully to avoid the foul-smelling, greenish puddles that collect in the street. You are not just visiting a patient. You are entering another world, one where sickness is woven into the very fabric of the environment. You find the right building and begin the long climb up a dark, narrow, creaking staircase. The banister is sticky to the touch. The walls are damp. You make a mental note to wash your hands thoroughly with your carbolic soap as soon as you are able. On the 4th floor, you knock on a door that is little more than a collection of rotting planks. It is opened by a weary-looking man with the pale face of a night shift worker. Inside, a single, small room serves as a home for a family of 6. The air is stifling. On a cot in the corner, barely more than a pile of rags, lies his wife, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. You recognize the woman from a visit last week. She had just given birth. Now she is in the grip of puerperal fever, childbed fever, a deadly infection that often strikes women after childbirth, particularly in conditions like these. You know from the recent, groundbreaking work of Ignaz Semmelweis in Vienna and Joseph Lister in Glasgow that this terrible sickness is likely caused by invisible germs, passed on by the unwashed hands of doctors and midwives. It is a tragically, infuriatingly preventable disease. Many esteemed male physicians in London have scorned this theory, deeply insulted by the outrageous suggestion that their own gentlemanly hands could be a source of fatal contamination. But you have seen too many women die to ignore the evidence. You place your bag on the floor and approach the woman. You brought your own small basin and a bar of carbolic soap, and in front of the husband, you meticulously wash your hands. You do it every time, a small pedagogical act. Then you gently examine the woman. You take her temperature, a small victory of objective measurement over the husband's subjective feeling that she is burning up. The number on the thermometer is alarmingly high. There's not much you can do for the infection itself. Antibiotics are a dream for a future generation. But you can offer comfort, hygiene, and guidance. You show the husband how to sponge her with cool water to manage the fever. You check her dressings and clean them. You give her a few sips of water. This is the unglamorous, patient, essential work of care that will not win you any professional accolades, but might just save a life. You are not just a physician. In moments like this, you are a teacher of public health, a nurse, and a beacon of simple, practical compassion in a place that has very little of it. On your walk back to your own quieter, more respectable street, a well-dressed couple passes you. The woman, resplendent in silk and feathers, stares at you, her eyes taking in your sensible, unadorned bonnet, your plain dress, and your black medical bag. Her expression is a perfect portrait of shocked disbelief and disapproval. The man with her husband perhaps, follows her gaze and smirks. "Look, dear," he says, his voice loud enough for you, and several others, to hear clearly. One of those so-called lady doctors. I suppose she's on her way to poison some poor soul with her newfangled notions and unsex herself completely. Your shoulders tense, your stomach clenches. Your first instinct is a hot flash of anger. You want to turn, to confront him, to list your qualifications from the University of Paris, to ask him to define unsex, to explain the germ theory of disease to him in small, simple words. But you do not. Years of this have taught you a hard lesson. You keep walking, your back straight, your pace unaltered, your face a mask of serene professional indifference. You have learned that rising to the bait is a losing game. Their mockery is not about you. It is about their own fear and insecurity in the face of a changing world, their terror of a woman who dares to step outside the narrow decorative box they have built for her. Your victory will not come from winning a street corner argument. It will come from the laundress's daughter, whose bronchitis will ease tonight because of your care. It will come from young Thomas, who will survive his whooping cough. It will come from the grateful look in the eye of a poor man whose wife might just live because you insisted on washing your hands. This is slow, quiet, revolutionary work. You are planting a tree whose full, cooling shade you may never get to sit in, but you will plant it anyway. As twilight descends, blanketing the city in a soft, forgiving gray haze, you return to your quiet town house. The gas lamps are being lit in the street outside, their steady flames creating pools of gentle yellow light on the damp pavement. You eat another simple meal, and then the day's final, and perhaps most important work begins. By the warm, steady light of your oil lamp, you study. You read the latest editions of The Lancet and the British Medical Journal, not because you are allowed to contribute to their pages, but because you must know what the men are thinking. You study the diagrams of a new surgical procedure for setting a complex fracture. You read a paper on a recent cholera outbreak in India. You memorize tables of dosages. Your knowledge must be unassailable, your expertise a fortress. Tonight, you also have a lecture to prepare. Twice a week, you open your home to a small group of young women, a few curious nurses, some aspiring students, a governess who wants to know more about child development. The official medical schools will not have them, so you will teach them yourself. Tonight's topic is basic sanitation and hygiene. It is your most hopeful work. Here, in this quiet, lamp-lit room, you are cultivating the next generation. You are forging the links in a chain, patiently ensuring that this strange, lonely, and difficult path you have chosen will not end with you. It is your small, radical act of faith in the future. Remember that pyramid scheme of a social order from Edo, Japan? You are at the bottom of your own professional pyramid, but you are also quietly, stubbornly, painstakingly building a new one right beside it. One based on merit, compassion, and shared knowledge. Before bed, you stand at your window, looking out over the sleeping, sprawling, gaslit monster that is London. 1 million lives are breathing, dreaming, and suffering in the darkness. You think of your patients, of the small, quiet battles you have fought today against disease, poverty, ignorance, and prejudice. It is a slow, incremental, often exhausting war, and the victories are frequently small and almost always invisible to the wider world. But you feel a sense of profound, quiet purpose that anchors you. You are a doctor, a scientist, a healer, a pioneer, and you know with a certainty that quiets the relentless noise of all the critics and all the doubters that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. You blow out the lamp, and the room returns to darkness. But it is not an empty darkness. It is a darkness full of quiet, patient, and absolutely relentless work. The slow, sweet history of beekeeping and honey in ancient Egypt. You wake not to a sound, but to a subtle, yet all-encompassing shift in the air, a change in its texture, its very quality. The deep, cool silence of the desert night is being steadily infused with a gentle, living vibration. It is the hum of 10,000 times 10,000 tiny wings warming up for the day's immense work. It's a sound that seems to travel through the thick, mud-brick walls of your small house. A sound you feel in the bones of your chest before your ears fully register it. It is the morning song of the bees, a collective hymn to the rising sun. Outside your door, the sky over the great river Hapi, the lifeblood of this entire land, is a soft, pale gray, not yet brushed with the pink and gold of the sun, God Ra's daily triumphant arrival. The air carries the scents of the riverbank, cool water, damp, fertile black silt, and the intoxicatingly sweet perfume of the blue lotus flowers just beginning to unfold their petals along the water's edge. You lie still for a moment on your simple reed mat, listening. This is your clock, your guide. You are a BYW, a beekeeper, a priest, and a servant to the pharaoh's smallest and most industrious subjects. Slowly, you rise from your mat and dress in a simple kilt of white linen, the standard, practical uniform against the coming heat of the day. Your life is not measured by the water clocks in the temples or the shadows cast by great obelisks. It is measured in the slower, more organic rhythms of the sun, the seasons of the Nile's inundation, and the life cycles of the flowers. While scribes in the great temple complexes track the majestic movements of the stars to order the kingdom's affairs, your calendar is written in the delicate, fragrant language of nectar. It is a slow, sweet, and deeply patient existence. You understand that you are not merely a farmer of insects. The honeybee, a fet, is a sacred creature, an emblem of cosmic order and royal power. The great pharaoh himself, the living god on earth, carries the title Nesubiti, which translates as he of the sedge and the bee. The humble sedge plant represents the long, narrow valley of Upper Egypt, while the industrious honeybee symbolizes your world, the flat, fertile, sprawling delta of Lower Egypt. The tiny, fuzzy creature that makes the liquid gold, the bit, is the very emblem of the king's authority over the unified two lands. You work for a very powerful and respected boss, one might say, one who is quite literally the bee king. The thought, as it often does, makes you smile. It's such a grand, imposing title for a kingdom whose power is built in part on the tireless, methodical work of such tiny, fuzzy laborers. This practice you are engaged in, this partnership with the bees, is an art as ancient as the pyramids. It has been passed down through your family, from father to son, for generations beyond counting. Egyptologists in the far, distant future, poring over papyrus fragments and the faded paintings on tomb walls, will debate the exact moment your ancestors transitioned from the dangerous, opportunistic practice of honey hunting, braving wild hives in high cliffsides and hollow sycamore trees, to the calm, orderly, and far more productive practice of organized apiculture. They will argue over pottery shards from the Old Kingdom, and whether certain hieroglyphs represent a wild hive or a man-made one. But you know this life simply as the proper, established way of doing things, a symbiotic relationship between man and bee that feels as old and as natural as the annual rising of the Nile's waters. And now, as the hum from your apiary grows from a low, sleepy thrum to a steady, productive, communal roar, it is time to begin your work. Your apiary is a simple, elegant, beautiful thing. It is not a collection of individual scattered wooden boxes. It is a neat, orderly, solid wall of long, cylindrical pipes, a stacked honeycomb of human design. These hives are made from the same dark, rich Nile mud that sustains all life in this land, mixed with straw and chaff for strength and cohesion, and then baked hard and dry by the relentless Egyptian sun. They are laid horizontally, one on top of the other, forming a coherent, defensible wall of potential sweetness. Each cylinder is a small earthen tunnel, a single, long, dark chamber where the bees can build their delicate wax combs, safe from the driving winds of the desert and the worst of the day's incinerating heat. Your first task of the morning is not a disruption, but a quiet inspection. You do not tear the hives open or pull out frames to check on the queen. That would be clumsy, disrespectful, and would invite a furious, stinging response. Instead, you practice the art of deep, quiet observation. You walk slowly along the front of the wall of hives, your movements calm, measured, and deliberate. You are a familiar, unthreatening presence. The air is already thick with bees, a swirling, purposeful, golden-brown cloud of them, each one a tiny droplet in a great, flowing river of life, pouring out from the dark entrances of the hives and streaming towards the flowering fields and gardens. You stop before each hive opening. You crouch down and watch the traffic. It tells you everything you need to in this moment. Are the bees emerging with energy and purpose? Is there a steady, two-way flow? Are the guards at the entrance, the larger, more stoic-looking bees, active and alert, inspecting each new arrival? You watch the returning foragers. Are they heavy with their bounty, their flight a little slower, more labored? Are their legs dusted with the bright gold and yellow powder of pollen, telling you what flowers they have been visiting? This morning, It seems many of them are returning with the pale whitish pollen of the flowering clover fields near the river, a sign that the nectar flow will be strong and the resulting honey light and sweet. As you watch one entrance, you might see something that still fills you with a quiet sense of wonder, no matter how many times you have witnessed it. One bee, having just returned from a particularly rich and undiscovered patch of flowers, lands on the vertical face of the clay hive. She then begins to perform a strange, complicated, and very specific dance. She waggles her abdomen with an intense vibration and moves in a precise figure-8 pattern. You do not understand the intricate geometry of the angles or the duration of the waggles, but you know exactly what she is doing. It is a message, a map, a piece of detailed instruction. The bee is telling her sisters the exact direction and distance to the feast she has found, using the current position of the sun as a fixed compass point. It is a silent map made of movement, a conversation you are privileged to overhear. The technology of your hives is elegantly simple, but the systems surrounding it can be surprisingly sophisticated. On some of the larger temple or noble estates upriver, they have an even more ingenious method. Whole apiaries, dozens of these same clay pipe hives, are loaded onto a large, flat-bottomed river barge. The beekeeper then becomes a river nomad. He gently poles his floating apiary down the Nile, from south to north, following the great wave of blossoms as they open. From the fields of Upper Egypt in the early part of the season to the great lotus gardens and citrus groves of the Delta in the later months. It is the world's first and most efficient migratory beekeeping operation, a kind of floating food truck. But instead of bringing the finished food to the people, you bring your tiny, dedicated workforce directly to the source of the raw ingredients. Historians of a later age, studying the Sun Temple of Nusser, will find reliefs depicting this very process, and find it a remarkable testament to a deep and intimate knowledge of the natural world. They will debate whether your clay hives were fired in a proper kiln by skilled potters, making them a form of mass-produced ceramic ware, or if they were simply hand-molded by the beekeepers themselves and left to dry and harden in the sun. You only know that they provide a cool, dark, and secure home for your charges, and that is what matters. The fruit of this human-bee partnership, the honey or bit, is far more than just a simple sweetener for your morning porridge. It is one of the most precious and versatile substances in your entire world. You have seen priests, their heads shaven and their bodies clad in pure white linen, carry large, sealed jars of it into the most sacred precincts of the temples, a worthy offering for Amun-Ra, or the goddess Hathor. When the priests perform the opening of the mouth ceremony on a new statue of a god or a pharaoh, anointing its lips with sacred instruments to give it the power to speak and eat and receive offerings, honey is often among the sacred materials used. Its perfect, golden purity, a liquid substance created from sunlight and flowers, and seemingly untouched by the decaying work of human hands, makes it a substance fit for the divine. It is also your culture's most effective and most widely used medicine. The great medical texts, the papyri of Ebers and Smith, written by the most learned scribes and physicians, are filled with hundreds of remedies that rely on honey. A healer will mix it with other ground herbs and minerals to make a soothing cough remedy, or blend it with animal fat to create a healing salve for burns and rashes. Its greatest and most mysterious power is in its application to wounds. You have seen it yourself. When a deep cut from a farmer's sickle or a burn from a kitchen fire is spread with a thick layer of honey, It seems to draw out the corruption and the bad spirits, preventing the wound from festering with pus. It creates a clean, sweet-smelling barrier, and under its protection, the wound heals quickly and cleanly, leaving a minimal scar. They do not have words like antibacterial or antiseptic, but they understand the results. They know that this sweet, sticky substance is a gift not just of flavor, but of health itself. Remember the strange assortment of things some ancient cultures used for medicine, like crocodile dung or fly specks. Your medicine is a simple, delicious, and far more effective application of natural magic. And of course, it is a marker of luxury and wealth. While a common farmer might only taste honey on a high feast day, the tables of the wealthy nobles and the pharaoh himself are graced with it daily. It is used by their cooks to sweeten delicate cakes and breads made from the finest white flour. It is used to glaze roasted ducks and geese, giving them a crisp, sweet skin. It is even used to make a sweet, fermented beverage, a kind of mead that is a gentle, intoxicating cousin to grape wine. A large, sealed jar of your finest, lightest-colored lotus honey is a gift of the highest status, a symbol of wealth, hospitality, and refined taste. Archaeologists and scholars will debate the full extent of honey's use in the sacred rites of mummification. Was it a primary ingredient for preserving the internal organs after they were removed? Or was it a rarer, more symbolic addition to the funerary goods meant to nourish the soul of the deceased in the afterlife? You know that for both the living and the dead, for both the mortal body and the eternal soul, it is a substance of profound and sacred importance. After a few weeks of patient waiting, after the main nectar flow has passed, and after you have observed the diminishing activity of the bees and have felt the satisfying solid weight of the hives when you tap gently on their sides, you know the time has come. Today is the day of the harvest. This is not a violent or rushed affair. It is a slow, careful, respectful negotiation between partners. Your most important tool for this negotiation is a small, wide-mouthed clay bowl, a simple censer. Into this bowl, you place a chunk of dried, fibrous cattle dung. You light it with a glowing ember from your morning cook fire, and it begins to smolder, releasing a thick, pungent, but not entirely unpleasant plume of gray smoke. With this smoking censer in one hand, you approach the back of one of the heaviest hives. Each of the clay cylinders has a removable cap on its rear end, a simple disc of hardened clay that has been sealed in place with more wet mud. First, you gently waft some smoke towards the main entrance of the hive at the front. The busy hum of the colony inside changes its pitch, becoming lower, deeper, calmer. The smoke is a signal of disruption. Then, you bring the smoker around to the back. With a small stone, you carefully chip away the dry mud seal and remove the heavy clay cap, revealing the dark interior of the hive. A deep, warm wave of air, thick with the intoxicating scent of pure beeswax and honey, washes over your face. It is one of the most beautiful and rewarding smells in the entire world. You gently blow a few more puffs of smoke into the dark opening. The smoke does not harm the bees, but it masks their chemical alarm signals, the pheromones that would incite them to attack. It also triggers a deep, instinctual response. They believe their home is threatened by fire, so they retreat to the front of the hive and begin to gorge themselves on honey, preparing to abandon ship if necessary. A bee with a full belly is a docile, sluggish, and far less aggressive bee. It's not so much a calming technique as it is a way of getting your entire workforce slightly drunk on their own product and disoriented by dung smoke, so they don't complain while you make off with all their stored-up savings. Now, with the bees pacified, you can reach into the darkness. Your hands and arms are bare, but your movements are slow and sure, without any sudden jerks. You feel for the heavy, hanging sheets of honeycomb. Your fingers recognize the feel of a full comb, heavy and dense. You find one near the back. You always leave the front combs with their brood and pollen for the bees themselves, and with a gentle twisting motion, you break it carefully from where it hangs from the roof of the hive. Slowly, reverently, you draw it out into the bright Egyptian sunlight. It is a perfect edible miracle. A beautiful golden mosaic of perfect hexagonal cells, each one a tiny wax jar filled to the brim with shimmering, viscous liquid, and sealed with a pristine, papery white cap of new wax. You are the very first person to ever see it. The sight fills you with a quiet, professional pride in your tiny partner's craftsmanship. This moment, this act, is immortalized on the walls of the great tombs, like the famous, beautifully detailed paintings in the Theban tomb of the vizier Rekhmir. You have seen drawings of it passed among craftsmen. A man, much like you, with his distinctive hair and kilt, kneels before the stacked hives, his smoking censer beside him, reaching in to claim the sweet harvest. That single, elegant tomb painting tells future generations everything they need to know. This was a skilled, important, and respectable job, a vital part of the Egyptian economy, worthy of being recorded for eternity in the final resting place of one of the kingdom's most powerful men. Archaeologists and historians will spend long hours debating the precise design of your smoker. Was it just a simple, open dish like the one you use? Or did some beekeepers use a more specialized ceramic vessel with a lid and a tube for directing the smoke with greater precision? You just know that your simple method works, allowing you to conduct this delicate operation in a state of mutual smoky peace. With your woven palm leaf basket now full of heavy, dripping, fragrant combs, you retreat to a shaded area near your house to begin the second part of your work. The honey must be separated from its perfect wax container. You have no whirring centrifugal machines, no complex modern extractors. You have your hands, a large, clean linen sack, and a very large, clean pottery vessel. You take the beautiful combs and, with a pang of regret for destroying such perfect architecture, you crush them. The rich, thick, fragrant honey begins to flow, pooling in a golden puddle at the bottom of the vessel. The scent is overwhelming, a heady mix of flowers, sugar, and sunshine. Once the combs are all crushed, the entire sticky, fragrant mass of wax and honey is scooped into the clean linen bag. Then, with an assistant, perhaps your son who is learning the trade, you each take an end of the sack and begin to twist. You wring the bag with all your strength, and the pure, liquid honey strains through the pores of the cloth, leaving the solid wax behind. A beautiful, clear, amber river pours from the sack into the collecting jar below. It is a slow, sticky, laborious, and deeply satisfying process. The filtered honey will then be poured into other, smaller, sealed pottery jars, ready for storage in the cool dark of your storeroom, for trade in the local market, or for payment of your taxes. Your name or the mark of the estate you work for might even be inscribed on the side of the jar while the clay is wet, a mark of its origin, its quality, and its year. But the work is not over. The mass of beeswax left behind in the sack is almost as valuable as the honey it once held. You will take this wax, wash it to remove the last residues of honey, and then melt it down in a pot over a low fire. As it melts, any impurities will float to the top to be skimmed off or sink to the bottom. The clean, clarified liquid wax will then be poured into molds to cool and harden into pure, pale yellow cakes. This wax has 1,000 uses in your society. A sculptor will use it for the lost wax method of casting beautiful bronze statues of gods and kings. A scribe might use a thin layer of it, melted onto a wooden board for practicing his complex hieroglyphs. An endlessly reusable tablet that can be warmed and smoothed over again and again. An ancient Egyptian iPad. Shipbuilders on the Nile will use hot wax to caulk the seams of their papyrus reed boats, making them waterproof. Artists will mix it with powdered mineral pigments to make a durable, lustrous paint that will remain vibrant for thousands of years. Absolutely nothing is wasted. This honey and this wax, this is your wealth. You will not be paid in the clinking metal coins of later civilizations. That idea is still centuries away. You are an essential part of a vast, complex barter economy, the lifeblood of Egypt. You will take a specified number of large, sealed jars of your finest honey to the cavernous storehouses of the temple, or the noble estate for which you work. A scribe, with his palette and reed brush, will carefully note the amount in his records. In return, from those same storehouses, you will receive your payment, sacks of emmer wheat and barley for the bread and beer that form the core of your diet, jars of sesame or moringa oil for your lamps and for cooking, and lengths of fine white linen for your clothing. The state, in the form of the pharaoh's tax collector, will also claim its share of your honey, not in gold, but in the golden liquid you have so carefully harvested and prepared. This entire system of exchange, a source of endless fascination and complex discussion for future economists and historians, is simply the natural, unquestioned rhythm of your life. The value of your hard work is measured in the essential things that sustain a family. As the sun god Ra begins his slow descent towards the western horizon, painting the sky and the surface of the Nile in brilliant orange and deep royal purple, your long day of work is ending. The air cools rapidly. The busy hum of the bees softens, quieting down to a low, sleepy murmur as the last of the foragers return to their hives for the night. You take a piece of warm flatbread, baked this morning by your wife on a clay plate over the fire, and you dip it into a small bowl holding a taste of the day's fresh, unfiltered honey. It is the purest taste of this place, the essence of the sun, the soil of the Nile, the nectar of 1,000,000 flowers of the delta, all concentrated by the alchemy of the bee into a single, perfect, golden bite. You sit at the doorway of your simple mud brick house, watching the first sharp, brilliant stars begin to appear in the vast, dark desert sky. The great river whispers by on its endless journey to the sea. You feel, in this quiet moment, connected to everything, to the pharaoh in his distant palace, whose royal symbol you tend each day, to the priests in the nearby temple, who will use your honey in their most sacred rituals, to the village healer who will use it to soothe the sick, to the bees themselves, your quiet, tireless, sweet-tempered partners, now sleeping in their earthen homes, awaiting tomorrow's sun. Your life is one of slow, patient work, dictated by forces far beyond your control, but it is a life of deep sweetness and a quiet, profound purpose. You feel a contentment that is as deep, as pure, and as golden as the honey in your small clay bowl. You are a Bat IW, and this is peace, the tranquil story of Persephone's life in the quiet underworld. You wake to a kind of quiet that doesn't exist in the upper world. It's not an absence of sound, but a profound and pervasive presence. A deep, resonant silence that seems to hum in the very atoms of the obsidian and basalt palace around you, a quiet that presses in on you not with menace, but with the gentle, constant pressure of a cool, weighted blanket. There's no jarring birdsong to tear you from your dreams, no sudden, insistent intrusion of sunlight. Here, there is only a steady, perpetual twilight, a soft, sourceless, silver-blue glow that seems to emanate from the very air itself, from the ghostly, phosphorescent veins of glowing moss that trace patterns across the rock, and from the myriad star-like crystals embedded in the high, vaulted ceiling of your chamber, which reflect and refract the dim light into 1,000 tiny, shifting constellations. You are Persephone, and this vast, silent, and deeply misunderstood realm is your kingdom, not by right of conquest, not yet by a fully conscious choice, but by a strange and profound arrangement that is slowly revealing itself to you. The stories mortals will tell of your arrival for millennia to come are full of terror and tears, of a maiden's panicked screams, a mother's frantic, world-withering grief, and a dark, silent lord's violent abduction. But those stories are loud, written in the bright, harsh emotional colors of the sunlit world. This is the quiet part that comes after the screaming stops. This is the story of finding a strange and unexpected home in the deep, unwavering stillness. You lie for a moment on the vast, cool bed, its dark fabrics woven from some unknown, silken fiber that seems to drink the light. They are embroidered with threads of pure, untarnished silver that catch the faint glow from the walls. The air is cool and smells of damp, clean earth, of petrichor without the memory of rain, of old stone, and of the faintest, ghostly, sweet scent of asphodel flowers drifting in from a distant, unseen meadow. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, and your bare feet meet not with the shocking jolt of a cold floor, but with the impossibly smooth, polished surface of an obsidian floor. It's cool, but it is not cold. It feels solid, permanent, grounding. Slowly, you dress for the day, though the concept of day is a fluid one here. You have learned to measure time by your own rhythms of waking and sleeping. The garments, stored in a great dark wardrobe of polished ebony, are different from the sun-bleached linens and saffron-dyed wools you once wore in the world above. These are heavier, softer, in deep, complex shades of violet, charcoal gray, wine-dark purple, and the deep, star-flecked blue of a moonless midnight sky. They make no sound as you move. In this kingdom, you learn to be quiet. It's not a command that has been given to you. It is a natural adaptation, an unconscious shedding of the noisy habits of the living, much like a deep-sea creature learning to navigate by pressure and feeling rather than by sight and sound. You walk out from your chambers into the silent, cavernous halls of your husband's palace. Hades. His name is a word of fear and finality in the world above, a name mortals are afraid to even speak. But you are learning, in the slow, unfolding hours of your new life, that the mortals have it all profoundly wrong. They imagine a fiery demon, a monstrous jailer reveling in torment and despair. The God you are coming to know is more like the realm he so perfectly rules, quiet, serious, immensely patient, and possessed of a deep, unmovable, and utterly impartial sense of justice. He is not a devil. He is the quiet, tireless administrator of the universe's largest and most inevitable bureaucracy. His palace is a perfect reflection of his character. There are no garish decorations, no triumphant murals depicting battles won. there are only immense, clean geometric lines of black basalt and gray marble, grand, echoing spaces defined not by objects, but by the interplay of shadow and the strange internal light. It's a style you might call brutalist minimalist, if you had the words for such things. It is an architecture of serene, beautiful, and permanent gravity. Your first task of the day, a quiet routine you have created for yourself in this timeless place, is a walk to the great threshold of the palace. You are not trying to escape. That initial frantic urge has long since softened into a dull ache and is now transforming into a kind of deep curiosity. You are here to listen, to understand the geography of your new home. You pass through the great unadorned gates, which stand open for who would be foolish enough to try and leave. There you find the great hound of the underworld, Cerberus, on his eternal watch. He is not the slavering, raging monster of mortal nightmares. As you approach, he does not snarl, but lifts one of his 3 great sleepy heads, and his 6 intelligent, mournful eyes blink slowly at you. You reach out and scratch him behind one set of soft, leathery ears, and a low, deep rumble of pure canine contentment vibrates up from his massive chest and through the stone floor beneath your feet. He is not a monster. He is simply a very, very large and exceptionally effective guard dog. A good boy on a cosmic scale. Standing at the edge of the palace steps, you listen to the rivers. The poets name 5 of them, and their sounds are the symphony of this realm. There is the slow, sighing whisper of the river Acheron, the river of sorrow, its sound like the collective, forgotten grief of millennia. There is the distant, mournful wail that seems to come from deep within the earth, the sound of the Cocytus, the river of lamentation. You see the pulsing, silent light from the Phlegethon, a river of fire that doesn't burn or consume but gives off a rhythmic, liquid heat and an orange, fiery glow. There is the heavy, sluggish silence of the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, its milky, gray waters moving with an oily slowness. You can see the shades of the newly dead crowding its banks, cupping its waters in their translucent hands and drinking deeply, their faces smoothing out as the burdens and joys and sharp pains of memory are washed away. And then there's the mighty Styx, the great, dark river of unbreakable oaths, its black, glassy water moving with a slow, inexorable power, a current of pure, binding authority. Their sounds and their silences blend into a single, complex, ambient chord. It is a sound that would fill a living mortal with a profound and existential dread, but to you it is becoming a strange, somber kind of lullaby. It's the universe's ultimate white noise machine, a constant, gentle reminder of finality. Scholars and philosophers in the sunlit world will debate for centuries whether the ancient Greeks truly feared the underworld as a place of active, fiery torment in the way later religions would, or if they simply viewed it as a gray, passionless, and rather dull continuation of existence. Looking out at the vast, quiet expanse, where the shades of the common dead drift like mist over the gray fields, you understand the second view much better. For most of its countless inhabitants, this place isn't a punishment, it's just the epilogue, the end of the story, the great inevitable and then. That comes after all the sound and fury has signified nothing. But a palace, even a subterranean one ruled by a silent god, requires a queen. And you, in your own quiet, determined way, begin to find out what that means. You decide to understand your new role. Your husband's work is all-consuming, endless, and repetitive. He is the final arbiter, the dispassionate judge who ensures the cosmic books are balanced with unerring accuracy. He sits for vast stretches of time on his great dark throne, listening to the endless whispered accounts of the newly dead delivered by the winged messenger gods. He weighs the deeds of their lives, not in a dramatic moralistic sense, but in a functional one, like an auditor checking a ledger, and decrees their final placement in his kingdom. His throne room is less a court of royal splendor, and more a celestial hall of records, a place of immense and solemn importance, and, if you're being honest, profound administrative dreariness. You find your own role beside him, not as a judge, for you lack his ancient, weary impartiality. You are a goddess of life, after all. You find your role as a witness, as a silent presence that somehow alters the very nature of the room. You sit on your own throne of polished silver and dark, fossilized wood, a quiet counterpoint to his immense, shadowy form. The shades of the dead are brought before you. They are not, for the most part, the tormented souls or wailing specters of mortal fear-mongering. They are like echoes, faint, translucent grayscale impressions of the people they once were. The waters of the Lethe have scrubbed away their specific memories, but their character, the essential shape of their soul, remains. Slowly, you begin to recognize types, to see the patterns in the endless procession. You see the proud, ramrod-straight stillness of the soldier, the quiet, lingering confusion of the child taken too soon, the deep, bone-weary resignation of the old farmer whose life was a cycle of planting and harvest. You do not speak to them, and they do not speak to you. You simply watch them, and you find that your presence, the presence of a being who still remembers the sun, seems to offer them a kind of final, gentle dignity on their journey. You are the last thing they see that carries a hint of life's warmth before they shuffle off to find their place in the great gray meadows of Asphodel. You are becoming the head of a sort of cosmic HR department, the one who handles the final, delicate phase of celestial onboarding with a touch of quiet compassion. You also learn, over time, that you have your own, unique and separate authority here. Classicists in the far future, trying to piece together your identity from fragmented myths and cultic inscriptions, will argue endlessly over the precise nature of your power as Queen of the Underworld. Were you a co-ruler with equal say in the judgment of souls, a kind of dark mirror to Zeus and Hera on Olympus? Or was your authority more specific, more focused on the living world's necessary and fearful connection to the dead, overseeing the proper execution of funeral rites, hearing the prayers of mortals, and presiding over the strange, rare, and dangerous art of necromancy? You discover, in practice, that it is the latter. Mortals who wish to speak with the dead do not cry out to the dread name of Hades. They call on you. You are the doorway, the liminal goddess, the intercessor. They make their offerings of dark wine and black sheep under the dark of a new moon, and you are the one who hears them, the one who might choose to send a fleeting dream or a ghostly whisper in answer. It is a strange, subtle, and rather lonely power, this ability to manage the delicate, permeable membrane between the worlds. And you find, with a nascent sense of ownership, that it is yours, and yours alone. One endless, quiet afternoon, you are wandering through the long, echoing halls of the palace, your fingers trailing along the cool, smooth stone. Hades finds you. He does not speak. He rarely does. But he stops before you, and in his large, pale hand, he holds a piece of fruit. It is a pomegranate, a strange, otherworldly thing that seems to have captured the last dying rays of a forgotten sunset in its tough, leathery, reddish-purple skin. In this land of shades and shadows and muted tones, it is an object of startling, vivid, and almost violent reality. He offers it to you, his gesture simple, direct. You take it from his hand. The skin is cool and smooth. He then draws a small, sharp knife with a blade of dark, unreflective metal, and with a surprising gentleness, he splits the pomegranate open for you. Inside, it is a shocking, impossible sight. The seeds are a breathtaking, impossible crimson, clustered together in their white, pithy chambers like a hidden treasure of tiny, blood-red crystalline gems. They seem to hum with a secret, condensed sweetness. You are not particularly hungry. Hunger is a faded, distant memory here. You are not thinking of consequences, of rules, of your mother's warnings. You are a goddess in a strange, new, and lonely place. And your quiet, somber husband has offered you a gift. It may be the first gift he has ever given anyone. You lift a small cluster of the glistening seeds to your lips. You do not devour them. You eat 6 of them, one by one. The taste is explosive. A sudden, sharp, brilliant burst of intense sweetness, followed by a deeper, more complex, slightly bitter, wine-like aftertaste. It is the taste of sunshine, of rich soil, of a hot summer day, all condensed and amplified into a single powerful sensation. For a brief, dizzying moment, it feels like you have swallowed a memory of the living world, a memory you didn't even know you were starting to forget. In the stories the mortals will tell, this act is a tragedy, a trick, a fatal mistake, a moment of weakness that binds you to this sunless realm forever. But in the quiet, real moment, sitting there in the silent halls of Hades' palace, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like the first real meal you have had since you arrived. It feels like putting down a root, a tiny, tentative anchor in this strange new soil. It feels like a choice, however small and unconscious, to partake in the very substance of this place, to accept it not just as your prison, but on some level as your home. Ancient commentators and modern mythologists will argue endlessly over the meaning of this moment. Was it a violation, a tragic error in judgment, a clever, legalistic maneuver by a scheming Hades, or a subtle, subconscious act of your own developing will to power? Here, now, it is simply the taste of a fruit, a quiet, binding contract, sealed not with spoken oaths, but with a mouthful of 6 sweet, red, permanent seeds. It is the universe's most consequential user agreement, and you just clicked, "I accept," without reading the fine print. Having now tasted the very fruit of the realm, you find yourself drawn to its gardens. Not the gray, listless, unchanging plains of the asphodel meadows, where the vast majority of ordinary shades, the neither very good nor very bad, wander for all eternity in a state of dull, passionless, forgetful ennui. This is the great neutral waiting room of the afterlife. Not a punishment, just eternal, profound boredom. No, you are drawn to the hidden, more exclusive corners of your new kingdom. Hades, in his quiet way, guides you. He takes you first to Elysium, to the Elysian fields. This is the VIP section of the underworld, a special, secluded corner reserved for the great heroes, the most righteous of mortals, and those few who were especially beloved by the gods. It is not sunny here. There is no sun, but a soft, warm, honey-colored golden light perpetually bathes the gentle, rolling landscape. The air is sweet, and a constant, zephyr-like breeze rustles through groves of tall, graceful poplar and dark, mournful willow. Here, the shades retain their vigor and their memories. You see the ghostly forms of great warriors practicing their spear throws in friendly, silent competition. You see poets, their faces alight with a gentle fire, reciting their epic verses to a silent, appreciative audience. You see just kings and virtuous queens enjoying a peaceful, eternal retirement, walking hand in hand through the amaranth flowers. It's a pleasant, serene place, a perfectly manicured celestial retirement community. It's lovely, but it's not for you. It still feels like someone else's idea of paradise. You find your own space, a dark, quiet, and overlooked grove near the palace, a place of bare, black stone and damp, silent earth. You are, after all, a goddess of vegetation, of the green and growing things of the earth. It is your very nature. It is who you are. And so, in the kingdom of the dead, you begin to garden, not with the boisterous, sun-hungry, brightly colored plants of your mother's world, but with the strange, secret, and beautiful flora of the shadows. You encourage the glowing, phosphorescent mosses to grow in thick, soft, velvety carpets that illuminate the grove with their cool, silver-blue light. You discover and cultivate strange, pale fungi that sprout in beautiful, elaborate, alien clusters, some shaped like the most delicate sea coral, some like cups or bells in shades of white, gray, and violet. You find a patch of earth where dark, weeping willows can grow, their leaves not green, but a shade of deep, silvery gray that shimmers in the dim light. You discover flowers that have no color at all, flowers that are defined entirely by their form and their texture. Black tulips with petals as soft and thick as silk, deadly nightshade with its glossy, deep purple berries, ghostly pale hellebores that bloom in the coldest, darkest part of the year. Your garden is a masterpiece of shadow and form, a place of silent, slow-growing things that thrive on stillness and cool, dim light. It is a perfect, living reflection of your own slowly changing soul, a nature that was once of brilliant sun and vibrant color, now finding a new, different, and more profound kind of beauty in the quiet, contemplative dark. After your strange meal, and with your newfound purpose in your garden, you find your time here passes differently. It is no longer an endless waiting. It is a slow, quiet unfolding. You have created a life here. And so, when the message finally comes, it is a shock. Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger god, arrives in a brief, noisy flutter of winged sandals that feels almost vulgar in the deep quiet of your home. He brings the news. Your mother, Demeter, in her all-consuming grief has blighted the earth. Nothing will grow. Mortals are starving. The fires on the gods' altars are dwindling. Your uncle Zeus, finally forced to act, has brokered a deal. You are to return. But, and here Hermes looks at you with a kind of pitying knowledge, because you ate the food of this place, the 6 seeds of the pomegranate, you cannot stay above forever. A compromise has been reached. For half the year, you will live in the sun with your mother. For the other half, you will live here, below the earth, as the queen of this realm. The departure is not a frantic, joyous escape from a hated prison. It is a slow, somber, and surprisingly dignified transition. You say your goodbyes. You walk through your dark garden one last time, your fingers brushing against the cool, silken petals of your beloved shadow flowers. You give the ever-watchful Cerberus a final, lingering scratch behind his many ears. And then you stand before your husband. You stand before Hades in the great throne room. He looks at you, and in his dark, ancient eyes, you see an emotion you cannot quite name. It is not the simple passion of the Olympian gods. It is a deeper, quieter thing, a profound reluctance, a deep-seated regret at your leaving. He, the god of endings and stillness, is for the first time experiencing a cyclical departure. He reaches out and places a cloak of the softest, darkest wool, as black as a starless night, over your shoulders to protect you on the journey. It is a surprisingly gentle, almost awkward and deeply moving gesture from a god who is unused to such things. As you ascend, guided by the impatient Hermes, you feel the world changing around you. The familiar deep pressure and the profound silence of the underworld give way. You feel a new, alien sensation on your skin. Warmth. You smell the long-forgotten scent of damp, thawing earth, of wet leaves. You hear a sound that pierces you to your very soul, a sound you haven't heard in what feels like an eternity. The bright, cheerful, artless chirping of a living bird. And then you step out of the cave, out of the darkness, and into the full, shocking, overwhelming glory of the light. It is blinding, a great, painful, glorious, all-encompassing wash of pure, liquid gold, and your mother is there, her face a mask of grief that transforms into radiant joy as she sees you. She rushes forward, her arms wrapping around you, and as you embrace, you feel a great, shuddering wave of life sweep across the dead, brown land. You can almost hear it. The frozen ground softens. Green shoots begin to push their way through the hard soil. The tight, dead-looking buds on the trees begin to swell and burst forth with new, tender leaves. Spring has returned, and in that moment, you are Kor again, the maiden of the flowers. For 6 months, you live in the light. It is a joyous, loud, and vibrant time. You dance in the sun-drenched meadows with the laughing nymphs. You feast on fresh honey and ripe figs and sun-warmed peaches. You weave garlands of bright, fragrant flowers for your hair. It is beautiful. It is wonderful. It is everything you once thought you missed. But sometimes, in the brilliant, bleaching light of high noon, you find yourself missing the deep, restorative cool of your shadow garden. You miss the serene, unbroken silence of the obsidian palace. You miss the deep, rumbling contentment of Cerberus. And you find, to your own profound surprise, that you miss the steady, quiet, undemanding presence of your dark, somber husband. So when the days begin to shorten, and the leaves on the trees turn from green to brilliant gold and fiery red, and the air grows crisp with the first hint of an autumn chill, you feel a pull. Not a sense of dread or doom, but a familiar, quiet tug, a sense of homecoming. It is time. You say goodbye to your mother. It is a sad farewell, but no longer a desperate one. She now understands that this is not a loss, but a cycle, a rhythm as natural as the turning of the seasons themselves. You follow Hermes back down the path into the earth, your celestial commute now a familiar journey. And when you arrive back in the great, silent halls, and Hades is there, waiting for you at the foot of the 2 thrones, it does not feel like a return to a prison. It feels, to your own deep surprise, like coming home. You have finally reconciled the 2 halves of your soul. Classicists will forever debate how the ancient Greeks themselves reconciled your 2 aspects. Were you 2 separate goddesses, the maiden Kor and the dread queen Persephone, worshipped in different ways? Or were you always understood as one complex goddess with 2 seasonal, interwoven roles? You know the truth now. You are one. You are the stillness and the storm, the dormant seed and the brilliant blossom, the spirit of the sunlit meadow and the quiet queen of the dark garden. You have found peace, not just in one place or the other, but in the gentle, endless, and eternal rhythm between your two worlds. You take your seat on your silver throne, and a deep, profound calm, a sense of rightness, settles over you. You are home again, and so your time in the quiet kingdom finds its own kind of peace. The great throne of silver is empty for now. The silent halls of the palace are at rest. The faint, ghostly shades have all shuffled off to the great gray meadows, and the rivers of the underworld continue their slow, eternal, and unbroken journey through the darkness. There are no more duties for the queen of this silent, sleeping realm tonight. Your part in the great cycle is complete for now. The memory of the sunlit world above and the memory of the deep, silver-lit world below all soften now, fading into a single quiet feeling of balance. The sounds of the whispering rivers seem to grow more distant, their individual voices merging into one low, continuous, soothing hum. There is only the feeling of this place now, a profound and endless stillness, a gentle, cool, and welcome darkness that asks nothing of you. Just as Persephone's time of wakefulness has ended, yours has too. The day's journey is over. There are no more paths to walk, no more choices to make. There is only this quiet, safe, and peaceful darkness. It is time to let go of the story and simply rest. Let your mind drift now, like a single, pale petal, floating on the dark, slow, and glassy surface of the river Lethe, the river of gentle forgetfulness, carrying away all the weight of the day, leaving only peace behind. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. Sleep well.